Hello. Hey there, loves. Welcome back to the Witching Half Hour or so. It is me, Jody Ann, the leader of our Earbud Coven. I'm so glad to have you with us. Thank you for subscribing. How are you all doing? I'm just going to chat a little bit before we get into today's episode. October was big, hey? There was a lot going on astrology-wise. How were those eclipses for you? I had some really profound stuff shift, and it's really exciting for me. I did a class with another practitioner, and I can feel it kind of shaking up my vibrations and really changing how I'm going to be manifesting things. Well, probably in the spring, right? You know me, I'm always connecting with that wheel of the year, and right now is the time of quieting and reflecting. I've been journaling a ton. Good news is I have a really cool plans for the podcast coming up, and I know that I'll be able to make them into a reality for you guys. I want to start hosting and offering you guys more classes, like downloadable classes, and hopefully this coming year I'll get the Patreon up and running. I have so much I want to do for you guys, and life just keeps getting really busy and really big, but yeah, we're almost at... Do you guys realize that this is episode 24? Yeah, we've been at this a whole year. Now, I think my first episodes launched in December last year, but this is it. We've made it a whole spin around the earth doing this podcast. And I'm really, really grateful for everything that has come out of it so far. And I'm super excited for it going forward. I'm hoping to put together like a little bit of a celebratory Yule episode for you guys. And I have some cool stuff coming up right before Yule with some guests. I'm going to keep it a secret. I'll hint maybe on the social medias when we get a bit closer. Okay. Now, today's episode, we are doing a tarot talk. And this is a neat one. We have started into the second set of the High Arcana, right? So if you've been following along, every about third episode, give or take, we talk about tarot cards, and we've been going through the High Arcana. The last card we did was the Chariot, the end of the first set of 7. Now, when I was taught about the tarot, not at the very beginning, but I've been studying it a long time, so I look at it in these sets of 7. And today we are looking at a very interesting card. Usually we break down the art, but in this episode, we're going to talk more about some of the teachings and ideas behind the tarot and some of the shifts it's changed, because we're talking about the 8th card of the tarot. There's a lot of history, and if you'll notice, not every 8th card in every tarot deck is the same. So we're going to talk about that. There's 2 cards that you will find in the 8th position. One is the Strength card, and this is going to be, most of our decks will have the Strength card in the 8th position. Some of our decks will have the Justice card in the 8th position. I want to talk to you about the history around that, okay? You know, I always go back to that Tarot de Mars High, those old decks, and the decks that people used to use to play the card game tarot. Those decks have the 11th position as the Justice card. As this game, similar to bridge, moved into a realm of being a fortune-telling and divination tool, for a long time that 11th card stayed there. It didn't change until the New Age movement. Was it the New Age movement? I guess it was the spiritualist movement. Yeah. It changed when the Golden Dawn was kind of the main flavor of spirituality. My dates of history is not great. Like, I know the history, but I'm terrible at the dates. And I'm sorry, loves, I didn't look up when the Golden Dawn movement was. I think it was the spiritualist movement of the 1920s, but I'm probably wrong. And I stand in humble correction. I know who it was. I don't remember when it was. And I just don't feel like looking that up today. What I will tell you though, is that the reason they switched card 11 and card 8 of the tarot is to align better with the astrology houses. So the Golden Dawn is responsible for a lot of our New Age magical practices. They are the ones who came forward with the ideas of the Cabal and the as above, so below, and the Hermetic practices. And these same practices are the foundations that evolved into our beautiful Wicca and into what we now call British trad witchcraft. The Golden Dawn did not like the way that the tarot cards mostly lined up with astrology, but sometimes not. We had this beautiful Justice card sitting at position 8. Well, the 11th house of astrology is the house that represents justice. So the Golden Dawn swapped the cards. That is why in some decks you will find the Justice card at the 8th space, and in some decks you will find the Strength card in the 8th place. Now, our friend Aleister Crowley was a member of the Golden Dawn. He separated out from the Golden Dawn at some point. There was disagreements. There's lots you can Google about that. So he separated out and formed his own following. Aleister Crowley started the Thoth movement, his own temple, if you will, still with magical principles. A lot of it is Kabbalistic based. Some of it draws more highly on the Alexandrian and Egyptian magic. He made a tarot deck called the Thoth. Aleister Crowley was a lot more, how do I say this? One of the things about the Crowley school is that it is much more removed from the Puritan Christian ideals. When the Golden Dawn was happening, their ideas were very forward thinking, but we are in 2022 now. So when we look at their writings and we look at what they've done, you can see within it how it is kind of limiting, and you can see those undercurrents of Puritan Christianity. So anyway, I super digress. Back to our tarot deck. So in our contemporary decks, we're going to see the echoes of this argument between the Golden Dawn and the Thoth. Some decks will always put the 8 as the Strength card. Other decks will revert back and put it at the Justice card. And I always find it really neat because if you read up on your tarot people, you can see which ones are following which school of thought. And you can look and see, did they study Crowley or did they study the Golden Dawn? The funnest thing to see is the decks that refuse to number the high arcana. There's a few decks out there and they don't number their high arcana. This is because they are not going to tell you where to put that card. Some decks will number everything but the 8 and the 11, allowing the reader to choose what path they're on and which side they're going to put that card on. Okay, so let's get into some of the divination meanings of these cards. I want to touch on the numerology before I get into each individual card, and we're going to kind of do it in an interesting way. So we're going to look at the 8 as, actually, let's do the numerology after we break down the cards. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to tackle them the more traditional way. I'm going to talk about the Justice card first as the 8th card of the High Arcana. Looking at this card, we see an aspect of the divine feminine. I want you to think about the High Priestess card, that number 2 card, and the Empress card, that number 3 card. Those are the first goddesses we met as we started along this fool's journey. And let's look at them and how they relate to the Justice card. She's a new aspect or a new facet of the same power. We have the scales of justice. There's lots of goddesses associated with justice and power. We can think right away of Mat, the Egyptian goddess of justice, with the ostrich feather on her head and her beautiful wings, who weighs your heart on a scale. We can think of Themis, Greek goddess of justice, the Roman goddess of justice. The Roman goddess of justice is named Justice, and she's represented in all of our courts today. You see statues of her everywhere, and she's always blind. This idea of blind justice. This isn't about not seeing what's in front of you. It's about choosing based on the real truth chord of your heart. It's about introspection, not making snap judgments, but tuning in to your sense of divine justice and making decisions based on truth, not on what you see, but on what you know in your heart to be true. The balance of your heart against a feather, the scales of Libra. And if we look at the Thoth deck and see what Crowley has penned, we see a lot that resonates in the sacred geometry with the scales of Libra. It's a very balanced card. It's very steely. You can see a lot of the element of air happening in it. And then when we look at the more traditional decks, you always see like a really true Lady Justice, the Roman goddess, right? And often we have those pillars that we see throughout the whole tarot. It's almost like she's on the same throne as we see the High Priestess on and the Empress on. This time she's acting as judge. And it is of note that goddesses of justice are also associated with harmony. That's why we know that tarot is talking about making decisions from our heart, making decisions that bring about harmony. And this is why the Golden Dawn wanted to move this card to the 11th space, because the 11th house is the house of justice, social order, harmony, society, and how we show up for others. So it does make sense why they did this. When the card is in the 11th position, we can reduce it using numerology to a 2. Being a divine number, we don't usually reduce the 11. We only do this in the tarot to look at the relationships between the double-digit cards and the single-digit cards. In the 11th space, she would relate to the High Priestess, having that divine knowledge, seeing through the veil, being able to see all things. You can even imagine that the veil covering Justice's eyes in the High Arcana is the veil that the High Priestess sees through. So although she's blinded, she's not really blind. It's by closing her eyes that she sees all things. For your client, this card, whether you read it as an 8 or an 11, is going to be all about decisions, discerning, finding your inner truth, centering yourself, and making decisions from your inner truth. It's about connecting to that facet of the goddess where you are making empowered choices. It also comes about when your client has a decision to make that is relating to how they show up in the world, and there's usually paperwork around it. Think about the idea of doing your dissertation, going back to school, writing a book, business decisions, business transactions, papers, diplomas, all those things that you would put a seal on or notarize. That is what Lady Justice rules over when it relates to your client and the questions they ask. Okay, now let's talk about the Strength card. Oh, wait, one more aspect of Justice. Just as she can relate to the High Priestess, Lady Justice can relate to the Empress. It is the Empress that usually holds court and makes decisions within her realm. So it doesn't really matter where you put her. Her themes ring true in both positions. 8 doesn't reduce down to 3, but 3 is a magical number of manifestation, and 8 is the number of infinity. So you still have a power relationship between the numbers. Moving through to that strength card. The strength card originally was in the 11th position, so we're going to start talking about it there. Now, the idea of strength is right away depicted in this, and you can see how it is about feminine strength and empowerment versus power over. We have a maiden who has tamed a lion. In the traditional decks, she is opening the lion's mouth, or she has the lion on a leash of daisies. Some more contemporary decks dive deeper into the idea of feminine power, the animalistic power of women, their power of creation, their relationship to passion, and feminine sexuality in this card as well. Aleister Crowley actually named this card Lust. He depicts a woman astride a lion, pulling back its mane and in the throes of ecstasy. It is to note that she is underneath the crust of Gaia. So you have that idea of out of a woman's ecstasy is divine power. She's reaching up and grabbing the source of the sun. So you have the echo of the divine union and creation and how that is all wrapped up in female power. Remember that Aleister Crowley's version of magic embraced human sexuality and the natural world much more than the Golden Dawn. They still had on Christian Puritan goggles, even though they were rebelling and being magical. There's a lot of very traditional hermetic ideas in their craft. In order to show female power, the Golden Dawn's version of the tarot has a woman standing empowered with a lion doing her bidding under her control. She has mastered the king of beasts with her femininity. Empowerment versus power over. So we have this very beautiful idea of feminine strength. And I want to relate that back to the numerology again. So if we have her at the position of 11, we're going to relate that to the divine feminine aspect of the high priestess. At the 11th position, we reduce that down to 2, and we are presented with the high priestess, a woman who can see heaven and earth, walks between the realms, and has all knowledge. It makes sense that with her knowledge, she would have empowerment and be able to rule over any manner of beasts. It's a different facet of the power. When we move the strength card to the 8th position, she relates to the Empress. And the Empress, being a ruler, rules of her heart. She doesn't keep people under her thumb. She evokes loyalty from people the same way that the strength card evokes loyalty from the beast to the woman. Now, what is this going to mean to your client when you're at a table reading? Well, the strength card calls you to be strong of heart, to get in touch with your inborn feminine power, to get in touch with the power of your emotion and the power of your heart. It's to be in touch with that flame within, that driving passion and flame within, the energy that inspires artists, the strength of will that we tap into no matter what obstacle is ahead of us. And there's also the lesson wrapped into this card that no matter what your client is feeling, no matter how overcome or overburdened or overwhelmed they're feeling, they absolutely have power in a situation. The key is that it's not power over. It's standing in your inborn power, standing in the truth that you are enough, that you have the tools you need, and that life never throws at you anything you can't overcome. We need to rise to the occasion. I do like the idea of the strength card coming after the Chariot and being the first of the lessons in the second set, because it does ask you to rise up, to stand in the knowledge and truth that you have. to stand up and step into your power. All of the soul searching you did in the first 7 cards, all of the lessons you've learned were for a purpose. Now get into your power and stand in it. So there you have 2 cards of the High Arcana. Both can work in the 11th space and the 8th space. A little bit of the history behind why they are where they are. I know I usually break down a lot more cards, but I felt like this episode, we wanted to get into some of the history behind why our deck looks the way it does. I am still going to put out a YouTube video for this one. So there'll be, as always, loves, there'll be links in the show notes to the YouTube. You can always go to my YouTube page, Tarot Talk, or if you Google The Witching Half Hour or So, I do come up on YouTube through that. I'm going to show you the cards, the Golden Dawn cards. I'm going to have them. I'm also going to throw up the cards from the Thoth deck. And I don't know, maybe a couple other in there, and just look at the differences. It's kind of fun to get into the esoteric argument of these 2 groups. It went on for quite some time. And again, I do apologize for not knowing the dates, but I'm not great at dates. I know the themes of the history, but I'm terrible with the dates of it all. I hope you enjoyed this, my lovelies. I hope you're liking the content. Please subscribe, join our earbud coven so you don't miss out on any of the episodes as they come out. Have a wonderful, beautiful rest of your day. Oh, I almost forgot. The website is www.jodiannepsychicmedium.com. All the show notes are there. Information on what I'm doing. You can book a reading with me through my website, where you can see me, what events I'm doing in the Lower Mainland. I know we have a craft fair coming up at the First United Spiritual Church. I will be selling soap and spa products at the fair. I'm going to have a table there. Yeah, it'll be great. There's lots of great vendors there. Come on out, support local for Christmas, and I will see you soon. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, bye guys. Controversial. Oh, I can't, because I can't say controversial. Let me try that again. I'm gonna get the pronunciation of that. Hang on. It reduces down to the 2 numerologically. Let's retry that. So much is going to get cut out here. Okay, let's just stop.